Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
Hello, welcome back. This is episode 40 of the Cornwall Property Podcast. I'm Dan.
I'm James.
And we're here to inform, educate, inspire you guys to get involved with property with a particular bias, I suppose, on the Cornwall property market. So again, this is our market update session. Those of you who are regular listeners, thank you ever so much for joining us and for bearing with us once more. And for those it's the first time, please, great to have you aboard. Thank you for joining us. And we are dropping podcasts every week with a market update episode, and then we follow that on with an Ask Dan and James episode. So every week we've got value, we've got content, trying to get you guys informed about property market, educated on how you could possibly get involved and inspired to actually take some action and get involved.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for all your lovely feedback and everybody who's always reaching out to us. It's lovely to have you on board. And just remember, if you are new or viewing newly, you can come to us on cornwallpropertypodcast.com, go onto our website there on the front page, scroll down to the bottom, send us a message and get in contact that way. Or as many of you do, go onto our social media platforms such as Facebook and reach out. We are here waiting to see how we can help solve the housing crisis here in Cornwall and bring investment.
Definitely. So let me kick us off. I have got two interesting articles that caught my eye for the right and wrong reasons, I suppose. You make your own mind up on which is which. And James has two himself. So the first one I want to point out, James, and one that was quite alarming. Granted, it's not necessarily Cornwall focused, but normally when things happen in other areas of the country, it's normally an idea and a marker put in the ground to what others generally try and follow, or it's just seen as, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How's it going to be received? But this one was quite alarming. I feel as an investor and a landlord myself, and as I'm sure you will. But it's the rent freeze legislation that has literally all of a sudden just been dropped like that in Scotland. So Scotland's shock new rent freeze announcement has left worried landlords in the dark, according to the country's largest letting agency. So there's been a controversial new plan whereby they're actually now introduced a rent freeze and an eviction ban until the 31st of March next year, 2023. Wow. Now, the idea is that this is trying to help tenants through the cost of living issues and the crisis that we're currently in. So it's trying to give them a bit of security in that, well, look, guys, your rents can stay the same. You can't be evicted from your properties. I completely understand what they're trying to do in that respect, to give a bit of peace of mind to the tenants. However, it's complete opposite end of the spectrum is the landlords. They aren't too chuffed about it, as you can appreciate. Obviously, mortgage rates going up. People might be on variable, may have come to the end of their mortgage term and they're having to renew. Again, we'll come on to articles in this, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks. But their interest rates, the differences in the interest rates now, it could be a difference from paying £230 a month on a mortgage, on an interest-only mortgage, to now, having changed nothing more, their mortgage is now at £500 or so a month. You can imagine it's doubled, essentially, in a lot of cases, those that have got renewals coming up. So if the landlords can't increase the rent, they could potentially be in a deficit and actually losing money. So as you can imagine, the letting agent apparently has now turned around and said, well, actually, a lot of landlords have said, look, the property we've just put up for let, change it, put it up for sale. So all of a sudden, what is trying to be a help, I suppose, to the property market that the policyholders and the MPs are kind of pushing, actually, when you start looking at it and actually understanding how it looks and feels for the other party, the landlords in this case, it's not going to be helping because so many more properties are now going to be sold, but the issue is people can't afford to buy them. So you're back in this catch-22 where people can't afford to buy their own properties, so they need to rent. But the problem is, because there's rent freezes and the landlords are now losing money, the landlords want to sell these properties. So it's become beginning to be a bit of a mess. Now, the frustration that is coming from David Alexander in this instance. So David is a CEO of DJ Alexander. So they're a big letting agency up in Scotland. And the frustrations they've got are that the minister that is putting all this in place and dropping all this information, actually, when he's quizzed about how's it going to work for this situation, that situation, he hasn't got any answers. They don't know. They're making it up as they go along. So here, just apart from the article, is everyone involved in the sector has been inundated with calls, and as tenants and landlords are worried about how this will actually impact their lives. And yet Scottish government ministers are still staying very vaguely that they will be giving further updates soon, but with no time frame and no help at the moment. And the comments here are, at the time that Scottish councils are housing the homeless in hotels hundreds of miles from their actual hometowns, housing shortages are at the record highs, demand is exceeding supply, as it is down in here in Cornwall. There are just so many people now are still in the dark and up in the air and what is actually going on. But again, they've just dropped this legislation last Wednesday without any real or consultation, because if they'd actually consulted with maybe the PRS and property redress schemes and Property Mark, for example, maybe they'd had a little bit more of an idea and a steer of how this would actually pan out. But it's not looking too popular at the minute.
No, I think it's quite frightening that suddenly it can be implemented at such short notice. Like, how do landlords? A few things that come up for me here is that, again, like you, I see what they're trying to do here. We're trying to protect the tenant, help housing. But at the end of the day, without the landlords, you're not going to have the properties in the first place. So they are the ones that create the spaces for people to live, right? That's what we're trying to encourage down here in Cornwall. But if landlords are, in a deficit and it's just not working, some people sort of view landlords where they're just, they're making extra money on top of their day job. But a lot of people, like us, we do property, that this is our full-time kind of income. This is what we do. And if it's not working for them, then, it's a real kind of stumbling block. The other thing I think people are missing here, or maybe it hasn't been thought about, is that it's quite simple. You mentioned about kind of like mortgages, like going up. And the rates, and people come to the end of their fixed term. But what happens when they're trying to go onto their new product? It's all good and well that their mortgage payments are going to be more, but the stress tests aren't going to work because the rent has to, they have to be getting so much rent for the stress test to work. But if they don't put the rents up, then the product doesn't fit. Then what happens? They really are, you're going to have to force or even be repossessed, or you just have to find another way. But the stress testing on the mortgages, that's like really, really worrying, because they won't stack up.
Tick those boxes.
No. So yeah, to implement that so quickly, I think is I'm going to say it, poor show, to be honest.
Big time. And the reason I brought this up is, although it's not necessarily Cornwall related or UK English legislation as such, sure, normally the Scots try things, the Welsh government try things, and then we kind of follow suit. I'm hoping that they're watching this closely and seeing what a mess it is turning into be, and it would not be something that would be seen with ourselves here. But
I fell for them.
Big time. Both sides as well, because the tenants, although, all right, can't be evicted, there's a rent freeze, but my landlord's now saying that he's selling the property. Well, what can I do? It's a right mess, and they're talking that they might just have to extend the legislation until they sort it out. But in essence, that's something that's happening as we speak. Very, very topical at the minute, and just something to be aware of, really. Mm-hmm. The next one from me is a very important one as a landlord, and also in this case, this article. And again, all of the links to the articles are in the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you just look at the show notes on podcast channel, your chosen podcast channel, maybe on iTunes or on Spotify, have a little look at the show notes. The links to all of these articles are on there. So please have a little look in your own time if you want to find out more. But in essence, this is, I'm just picking up this article here. This article was in the property118.com. And basically, we're looking at this is the 12th annual Gas Safety Week. They're probably saying, that sounds like a fun festival. So essentially, it's more of an awareness week, whereby this is now the 12th year in a row where all of the kind of big dogs in the property sphere, Property Mark, the Property Redress Scheme, they're all trying to encourage and make people aware, landlords who maybe private rental, and they manage their own properties, the importance and the legalities behind having gas appliances in your properties that you let out, and the importance and the legislation that says that you must have an annual gas safety check and gas safety certification up to date. So this week is just there to raise awareness on that, because sadly there's still a lot of properties that don't get this. So if you're a tenant and you've got a gas in your property, you must make sure that you have an up-to-date gas safety certificate. It's legislation. But the really concerning thing here is actually this article not only raises the alarm on you must make sure you have a gas safety certificate, but it also says that just under half of landlords who have properties with gas within them, they actually say that they're not being allowed entry into their own properties to carry out these gas safe certificates and these safety checks. So legislation.
Where's that coming from, though? Is that coming from the
tenants? Tenants aren't giving them access. Yeah, tenants aren't allowing access. So obviously legislation says that a landlord must have this. But then the landlord saying, well, look, I can't physically barge. I'm not allowed to just charge into my own property. I'm not allowed access. The tenants aren't giving me access to my property to carry out this testing. So it's kind of like a catch-22. So what people are saying is, look, please, it's for your own safety. Just let these checks happen. So Landlord Action and other property organisations, such as I mentioned, Property Mark, they're all supporting this awareness week, and they're also requesting that tenants ensure that they grant the necessary access for landlords to facilitate these safety checks. So for those that aren't aware or maybe not up to scratch, all landlords renting properties with a gas appliance of any sort, they have a legal duty to carry out gas safety inspection every year, but it must be obviously by a gas safe registered engineer. So again, must be done. You'll have a landlord's document. You'll have one for the house, one for the tenant, for example. But the survey, which was carried out by Landlord Action last month, they said that 46% of landlords have been denied access to their rental properties. So quite alarming. But so if you're a tenant, please make sure that you allow access. It's for your own safety, this is. And it's not necessarily the landlord's going to come around and do this test. It is a gas safe engineer who will come by and basically conduct this safety check. So just again, more of a just jumping on the bandwagon. It's it is Gas Safety Awareness Week. Make sure your properties are up to scratch and make sure you get them done. And if you're a tenant, make sure you allow access because it has to be done.
Absolutely. And it's not just going to make sure that you're safe within the property, but we all know how much gas, oil, whatever system you're on is costing at the moment with inflation and everything. It's actually to have the service on the boiler. It may be safe, but it's also to make sure that it's working efficiently. So in the long run, it's probably going to cost you that little bit less because it's not having to work harder because, I don't know, the heat pump's getting old or something like that. So it's to let them, come on in. I can't see why, unless you're hiding something. But 46% of people can't be trying to hide something. I don't know. But it's a good article there, Dan.
Interesting stats. Over to you. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I've got a couple of headlines that I've managed to pick up on. I found quite interesting. Headline one was, coastal areas see largest affordability decline during pandemic. And this was according to a article on Rightmove that I found. It goes on to say that areas by the coast have seen the biggest decline in first-time buyer affordability during the pandemic. A strong house price growth has outpaced the change in local salaries. Rightmove's new affordability and analysis has revealed, which I think we can all kind of relate to that in Cornwall, with many people moving down and just house prices, in some areas going up by 35% down here in Cornwall. That's not surprising now that report has come out. Goes on to say the average 10% deposit for first-time buyer homes has risen by 17% to £22,409, which, let's be honest, that's quite a weighty bit of savings to try and save, isn't it? But especially with the cost of living and things like that at the moment. Article goes on to say rising asking prices and interest rates means that the average monthly mortgage payment, get ready for this, for first-time buyers putting down a 10% deposit is now £1,032, representing an increase, wait for it, this is the big one, of 39% increase there compared to the same time in 2019. I mean, what's your view on that, Dan?
One you need a 10% deposit, which house prices have gone up anyway, so you're going to have to have a larger chunk from your savings or the bank of mum and dad if you're very fortunate enough to have that. And not only that is, well, here you guys, congratulations, you've managed to score your property. Downside, you need to slap us a good grand a month just to live in it. It's crazy. I suppose, what's the flip? What's the other option? Well, you're renting. Well, actually, there's not a lot of rentals still at the market because, by the way, there's landlords that need to sell up or they're now turning to other options and other investment vehicles because they're just not being supported or anything, or they're not incentivized by the government to have these because they're making it so hard to be a private rental landlord. Yeah, hard times
for sure.
And again, what are the solutions? It's tough. I do feel for the government as well because they have got a lot to sort out and a lot of people to try and please and they just need to not make rash decisions like they have up in Scotland. And consult with the bodies who are on the ground and the experts who are on the ground, not just necessarily, we think, for example, the MPs in charge of the housing now, again, it was Gove, it's now changed again because we've had a change in leadership at the top of the Conservative Party. And what background have they got within the housing? What real experience have they got? And again, it's so frustrating. And not a lot by the looks of it.
No,
So
absolutely. And
they
it
need to
also
use the consultations.
Indeed, and it also goes on to say it's much harder for first-time buyers in the areas where prices jumped considerably over the past years, especially when you add in 6 consecutive interest rate rises and average local salaries not keeping up with the pace. And I think for affordability, if you're buying on your own, you've just got no chance. Being on a salary, times that by 5, that's what you can buy. But with the relevance to Cornwall and how much the housing prices have gone up down here, I think you really kind of need to be buying with 2 people. Ideally, would be sort of 3. So yeah, that's it's an interesting one. And again, as we're not mortgage advisors, but if you can get a fixed rate for the next couple of years at least, I think it's it's good advice really, because they're only going to be going one way, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see some more increases over the next few months before Christmas. But there we go. Another headline I've got here as well: landlords looking to offload properties onto tenants, say brokers. I mean, surprise, surprise. Brokers report that they have seen a growing number of tenants say that they have been given first refusal to buy the property they are renting over the last 2 months. It is believed that this is due to the combination of the new Energy Performance Certificate, EPC, rules coming in 2025, an economic environment that is making it more difficult to produce yield and property prices being at record high levels. And I think this is very similar to the article that you were reading about earlier on, Dan. It's do landlords want to keep these properties, or do they want to sell them? Is it just a viable thing as a business investment? And who is the first person that they would probably go to sell it to? Well, they don't maybe necessarily need an agent, do they? They've got a buyer that could be that tenant, but
And again, coming back to the actual source of this, what is the reasons? Well, they're saying that the most common reasons why landlords are considering this is because of the new legislation regarding the energy efficiency. So EPCs need to be a C rating by I think it was December 2025. So you've got a couple of years, and it's mandatory that your property needs to be at a C rating. Currently it's an E. So it's just a big difference. So when you've got an older property that you probably haven't put a lot of care and attention in, maybe kept up to scratch or up to date, some of these older properties are hard to keep on top of maintenance wise, let alone thermally efficient. So when you start adding up what needs to be done to get your property to a C, it's kind of weighing up, can I justify doing this works for the return that I'm getting? And especially at the current market where mortgage payments are so high, and affordability is so difficult, and cost of living so difficult. So what are my options? Just cash in where I can.
Indeed. And also, this might not be a bad thing, as the article says, but it also went on to say that the landlord market is still fruitful and will continue to remain so. However, with these new legislations coming into play, such as licensing and EPC guidelines, I think we will see the death of the cowboy who has no intention to care for the well-being of their tenants and just wants to make a quick buck. This would not necessarily be a bad thing. So you might have these landlords that literally do not even want to put batteries in a smoke alarm. They don't want to spend anything. You might actually filter those out and have the more professional landlords that are doing work to the properties to make a better standard of living. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
We're hopefully an example of that, because everything we're trying to, every property we bring to the market, we develop, we are aiming for a C rating or better. And that's something that we're very proud of, and we're trying to really enforce. So it's just future-proofing your properties for your tenants and yourself, really. That's the key. But no, really interesting stuff there.
See what happens.
That's it. So this brings us on to the final part of the show, where we aim to bring you some options, really. So obviously, as I mentioned previously, our focus is to try and give you opportunities to get involved with property, a bit of inspiration. And Dan, I've got a commercial property that is currently on the market that could be a good investment opportunity to bring more housing to the market for Cornwall. Obviously, we've got a Cornwall housing crisis currently. The idea is that we bring more homes to the Cornish market. We can hopefully make a little dent into that issue. And James has got a residential. So my property, if you are viewing on YouTube, you can access this and view this in real time. If you're listening on Spotify or your Apple device, please just scroll down on the show notes. You'll have a link to the Rightmove advert, if it's still hopefully on by the time you're looking at it, and you can have a little gander yourself. But essentially, the property I've got is a commercial property. It is in St Austell. It's actually a very good butcher's and bakery. It's been used. Well, it used to be Tregonizzi Butchers, actually. They've just changed the name to Noughts and Crosses. But what this is currently up on auction. It's on Auction House, Devon and Cornwall. The auction is due on the 22nd of this month, so next this week actually, from you listening to this podcast. It's currently a mixed-use property. So you've got commercial on the ground floor, which is where they use the property as a butcher/pasty shop, and upstairs is already a residential property. So upstairs is a 2-bedroom apartment. It's got off-road parking, which is a massive bonus, in a really good location as well, just on the outskirts of the main town. Really good access to get yourself out of St Austell onto the A30 towards Bugle, that sort of way. Great distance sea views from the first floor as well. So what I'm seeing here, so the guide price here is 186,000 plus. Obviously, you've got your standard additional fees with regards to the auction. But what my visions here are that you're buying for 186,000. You're buying a 2-bedroom apartment with parking upstairs, which isn't obviously that's higher than what a 2-bed should be around that area. But you could then have the potential to, obviously subject to planning, you need to do due diligence. But I'm looking at this as, I've got a really good footprint upstairs for a 2-bedroom apartment. Well, the downstairs, if you look on the floor plan here, which if you can see on the screen, it's a similar footprint to upstairs. So you could essentially just replicate that footprint on the ground floor. So potentially another 2-bedroom apartment downstairs. So for the price it's currently up for, if you look on the photos, as you can see here, downstairs is all commercial as you can expect. It can be bought as a going concern with the business as it is, but I see this as an opportunity maybe to convert the downstairs commercial into residential and literally mirror upstairs. You can see there the parking options and the location, but it's a big old lump. There is actually a basement
Good
as well.
Space, yeah.
So you've got some storage there, maybe bike storage, bin storage. But yeah, just the price caught my eye. I appreciate it's a guide price and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go for that, but it might be a little option to bring something to the market.
Very good. And with my residential property, also I got a price that caught my eye, which was 130,000. And if you've ever felt like living inside a ship, this might be the one for you, for all of you nautical lovers out there. This is a property, the Bay in East Lou. It's a 2-bed cottage. It is Grade 2 listed. Not that you should be completely afraid of that. It just means you need to take a few more things into consideration. As always, get professional advice when dealing with Grade 2 listed buildings. But it's a good property, 2-bed cottage, close to the harbour. It's close to all the amenities there, and I think it's got it certainly has got a lot of character at the moment. But I think if you were to sort of rejig a couple of things around, you can make this into a really nice small little house for somebody. And I think there's good value to be added. I think it's a very good sort of community looking property, and yeah, I think it could be really good. Thoughts on it, Dan?
Yeah, look at that shiplap cladding.
I mean, I'm sure these are like ship fittings in there, the way it's been designed.
Quirky.
You know,
But with it being Grade 2 listed though, you normally have some really stunning features. Like they've got some really beautiful beams going across there as well. You could bring out, but no, price is good. It's an empty property. Could be a lovely home for someone, and it's affordable, which I like as well. So yeah,
absolutely. No parking with it, but still, I think for the right, small family, this could be, quite good as well. It might even be for a couple that might be more suited. But the point is that it is empty. It has been empty for over 9 months now, and there's people out there waiting to get a home. This could be one that you could bring back. So I think it's a good buy, actually.
I like it. Nice one. Well, guys, that brings us to the close of today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. But again, we'll look forward to having you with us next time. And for the Ask Dan and James. And so goodbye from me.
And that's goodbye from me. Thanks, guys.